Hi, I'm Dr. Beck Bennett. Welcome back to the AIMER video series. In this session, video 6, Holding the Space, we're picking up exactly where we left off on our last video. If you joined us for video 5, you'll remember that we began exploring one of the most important and often challenging questions in hearing care. What do we say when our clients open up about how they're really feeling? Together, we walked through the start of a simple but powerful framework, the 4 steps to supportive responses. They included active listening, responding with empathy, validating with experience, and understanding the client needs. In the last video, video 5, we covered step 1, active listening, and we began unpacking step 2, responding with empathy. We explored what empathy looks like in action, how it differs from sympathy, and why your response, even if just a few sincere words, can have a lasting impact on our clients' emotional safety and willingness to engage. But empathy isn't just a one-line response. It's a layered skill that takes practice and intention, and there's so much more to explore. So here in this video, we're going to finish exploring step 2 by looking at how to tailor our empathy to the client's specific story. And then we'll continue on to steps 3 and 4, looking at how we validate our clients' emotional experiences and how to understand what kind of support they're actually hoping for from us. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I recommend pausing here and heading back to video 5. It'll give you the grounding you need to really get the most out of what we're about to talk about here in this video. But if you've already watched video 5 and you're ready to dive into part 2, let's get started. Once you feel more confident with general empathetic responses, you can take it a step further by personalizing what you say to really match the client's story. This is where empathy gets even more impactful. Let's look at an example. Instead of simply saying, "That must be really hard," you might say, "That must be really hard, especially when you're at a dinner party with friends and everyone's talking over each other and you feel like you can't keep up." Or instead of simply saying, "That sounds frustrating," you could say, "That sounds frustrating. I can imagine how exhausting it must be to keep asking people to repeat themselves and still feel left out." See the difference? You're not just showing empathy. You're showing that you've truly heard their story and you're connecting your response with the details of their story. Why does this matter? Well, personal empathy really magnifies that feeling of being seen and heard. It says, I'm not just listening to respond, I'm listening to understand. And when a client feels that level of understanding, it builds trust. It strengthens the therapeutic alliance, and it helps them feel safer opening up now and in the future. As hearing care professionals, many of us are trained to focus on products and solutions, to spot the problem, get in there and fix it. It makes sense. We're clinical experts, and we often feel most confident when we're in that technical space, talking about gain settings, real ear measurements, or the latest hearing device features. But here's the thing. When clients start to open up about their well-being, they're not necessarily looking for a fix. They're looking to be heard. And if we jump too quickly into problem-solving mode, we risk something I call empathy bypass. This is where we steer away from those emotional content and we retreat into the safety of our own technical knowledge. We've all done it. It's usually not intentional. It's just a habit. But I challenge you to witness yourself in those moments, to be an observer of when you steer away from the emotion and when you focus on it. And challenge yourself to try and be more present in those emotional moments. Let's take a look at this short video clip. It's not about audiology, but I think you'll instantly recognize what's going on.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, You do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't...
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can go on? We can work it out.
So what did you notice? That poor guy, hey? He's trying to help. But what she really wanted was not a solution. She really just wanted someone to say, hey, I hear you. I see you. That sounds awful. It's a perfect example of communication mismatch. One person is operating from a cognitive lens, analysing the problem and offering solutions, whereas the other person is operating from an emotional lens. They're looking for empathy, connection, support. And this happens in audiology practice all the time. A client might say, I just don't feel like myself anymore. I'm avoiding conversation. And our instinct might be to say, well, that's the hearing loss. Let's get you hearing aids. But what they may really need first is for us to say something along the lines of, that sounds really tough. Would you like to talk a bit more about how it's been affecting you? Let's break this down. In any appointment, there are usually two communication streams running at once. The cognitive component, that is the facts, the story structure, the information they're giving us, and the emotional component, that's how they're feeling, what's worrying them, and what they're not always saying directly. As hearing care professionals, we're often trained and rewarded for tuning into the cognitive layer. This is largely where we make our clinical decisions. But if we don't also tune into the emotional layer, we miss important cues about what matters most to the client. We risk missing what they're actually trying to tell us. Let's take a moment and walk through a real scenario. You're in your consultation room. Your client looks at you and says, in a serious, slightly anxious tone, maybe I need them, but I can't wear hearing aids. My boss won't like it, and everyone at work will make fun of me. Pause for a second. What's your first reaction? Be honest with yourself. Do you feel the urge to jump in and say, of course they won't. I'm sure that won't happen. Do you want to fix the worry or dismiss the fear? That's natural. Now, I want you to pause, really pause, and ask yourself, what's going on underneath this statement? This isn't really a question about hearing aids, is it? It's a statement soaked in emotion. And when we listen closely, what might we find? Fear, shame, embarrassment, anxiety about judgment, status, identity. So here's your moment to shift from content to curiosity, from correction to connection. On your worksheet, go ahead and write down what you think this client might be feeling. Jot down a few words. There are no wrong answers. Now let's explore how we might respond differently. Not to fix, but to hold space, to show that this is a safe space to talk about these things. Jot down what you might say differently in response to this client to show that you're really listening, that you care. Here are 5 examples of how we might respond. We might say, that sounds really hard. It makes sense that you'd be worried about how your colleagues might react. Or you're not alone in that fear. Lots of people I work with have similar worries when they start thinking about wearing hearing aids at work. Or you might say, it sounds like you're worried about being judged. That takes courage to say out loud. You might say workspaces can feel really exposing. I can imagine that's a vulnerable place to show something new like this. Or you might say, thanks for being honest about that. Can we talk about what those reactions might look like and what support could help you to feel more confident? Notice what's different in these responses. None of them say, don't worry, or that won't happen. Instead, they empathize, validate. Because what this client really needs in this moment is not a technical solution, but emotional safety. All right, let's look at another real-world example, one that might sound pretty familiar. A client says to you, you said my batteries would last about 2 weeks, but I'm only getting less than 1 week. These new ones really aren't as good as my old ones. What's your first thought? If you're like many of us, you might instinctively go into fix-it mode. You might be thinking, they're probably not turning the hearing aids off at night. And you might be right. But is that really the only issue here? Let's take a deeper look. This client might be telling you more than just a technical problem. They could be expressing frustration that something isn't working the way they'd expected, disappointment in the new technology or in their own ability to manage it, insecurity, a sense that they might be doing something wrong, or even regret, wondering if they made the wrong choice getting new hearing aids. On your worksheet, take a moment to jot down what emotions you think might be underneath this comment. Do you hear frustration, a dip in confidence, maybe even a little embarrassment? Sometimes what sounds like a hardware issue is actually a human one. So how do we respond? Not just as technicians, but as supporters. Take a moment to jot down in your workbook some ideas about how you might respond in an empathetic and supportive way. So here are 5 ways to offer empathetic and supportive responses that acknowledge both the content and the emotion for this client. You might say, that sounds frustrating, especially when you're expecting them to last longer. Let's take a look at that together. You might say, I hear that this isn't feeling like an upgrade right now, but let's figure out what's going on and how we can get this working better for you. See how these responses do 2 things. They acknowledge the emotion and they offer support without blame. They shift the focus from you're doing it wrong to let's work it out together. Because sometimes the fix isn't just about the battery life. It can be about restoring confidence, building trust, and reaffirming that your client is not alone in their moment of distress. Let's look at this next client statement. They say, I don't hear as well as I'd like, but I think I can get by without hearing aids. I'm 62, not some old lady. Now, I've heard variations of this many times in the clinic. And to be honest with you, I don't think I used to handle them very well. I often dismissed the comment, not because I didn't care, but because I just didn't really know how to respond, and I didn't really understand what they were trying to say with the comment. I didn't know what to do with it, and I felt like it was outside of my skill set to be able to manage it. But then I took a counselling course, and in one of our training sessions, my supervisor posed a challenge. What would happen if I just sat with a statement like this, or even explored it, got curious, maybe even challenged it? At first, I was really worried, but also curious. I was ready to try it. So the following week, a client came in with a mild moderate hearing loss bilaterally. When I brought up the idea of a hearing aid trial, he said, well, no, I'm not old enough for hearing aids. And so I asked him, at what age is one old enough for hearing aids? He looked confused, understandably. And so I said, George, you're 84 years old and you've just said you're not old enough for hearing aids. And so I'm interested, at what age is one old enough for hearing aids? At that point, he burst out laughing. He said it was a silly question, but he could see now that it was based on his silly statement. He said that it helped him realize his fairly unhelpful assumption. And that conversation opened the door to something quite special. We talked about how he saw hearing aids as a symbol of decline, of giving in. And once we aired out those hidden thoughts, he then felt comfortable to talk more openly about how hearing aids might actually be able to help him. So let's come back to this woman's comment. She says, "I'm 62, not some old lady." What emotions might be behind this comment? Fear of aging, embarrassment, loss of identity, resistance to what hearing aids might represent. So how might we respond? Well, here are some examples. We could say, "It makes sense that this feels like a big decision. Can I ask what hearing aids represent for you?" Or, "It sounds like there's something about the idea of hearing aids that doesn't sit right. Can we talk that through together?" Or, "You're not alone in feeling this way. Lots of people worry about what hearing aids might say about them." These responses don't put pressure on the client. They create space. And sometimes that's exactly what's needed. Many of us work with an older client population. And in my experience, the death of a spouse or loved one comes up more often than we might expect, even during a standard audiology appointment. Now, I was lucky. I grew up in a family that talked about death often as something natural, part of life's rhythm. But I know not everyone feels that way. So let me ask you, are you comfortable talking about death in the clinic? Can you tell the difference between a client stating a fact, "My husband passed away," and a client expressing a quiet plea for emotional support? Let's look at this statement. The client says, "I know my hearing is bad, but I don't need to hear anyone anymore now that my husband is dead and I live alone." Now, without the context, it is hard to really know what she's saying. The tone of her voice and the conversation that came before this statement would give us a lot more clues. But can I ask you, is it ever okay to be dismissive of a statement like this? Would you react differently if she was 45 years old and not 85 years old? So what do you think she might be trying to tell us here? Take a moment, mark it in your workbook. What emotions do you think are being expressed here? Sadness, loneliness, a sense of hopelessness, disconnection from life? The thing is, you can't know for sure until you invite the client to tell you more. But if we never acknowledge these deeper emotions, we risk missing the most human part of the conversation. So now that we've heard the emotional cue, how might we respond? Here are a few examples. We could say, "That sounds incredibly hard. Navigating life alone now. Are you well supported?" Or we could say, "Losing someone you've shared your life with changes everything. You're doing something really brave by being here today." We could say, "I can't imagine how quiet the house must feel. Would it help to talk a little about that?" These moments aren't about fixing. They're about witnessing, being present, holding space. And for some clients, that might be the most healing part of the appointment. Let's take a moment now to talk about two powerful communication tools that come up often in well-being conversations: validation and normalization. They're both incredibly useful, but they do slightly different things. Normalization is about communicating that others have the same experience. It reassures your client that what they're feeling is common, expected, and okay. It can reduce shame, anxiety, or that sense of being the only one. For example, as healthcare professionals, when we say something like, "A lot of people with hearing loss feel exhausted at the end of the day. It takes a lot of effort to listen." It's like we're saying, "You're not alone in this." Now, validation, on the other hand, is about connecting with the unique experiences of the individual in front of you. It shows that you're really listening and that their emotions make sense given what they've been through. For example, we might say, "It sounds like that moment really hurt. No wonder you felt so frustrated." It's like saying, "What you're feeling is real and it matters." Both normalization and validation are important tools. But here's the key. When someone is expressing a strong emotion, like sadness, embarrassment, or fear, start with validation. Why? Because jumping straight to normalization too early might feel dismissive. It can sound like, "Oh, that happens to everyone," which might unintentionally shut down the conversation. Instead, validate with something like, "That sounds really hard." Then, once your client feels heard, you might follow with, "And you're not the only one. I hear this from so many people." Normalization, second, can help them to feel not alone in their experience. These two skills help us create a space where our clients feel safe, heard, and respected. And that's the foundation for real connection and meaningful support. In your own clinical practice, are you more comfortable with normalizing or validating? What might it look like to shift the order and begin with validation next time? Let's move to step 4, understanding their needs. Now, this step is often overlooked, but it can completely change how the rest of the appointment unfolds. As hearing care professionals, we often feel a strong urge to fix the problem. A client tells us they're struggling, and we instinctively jump in with, "Well, here's a hearing aid," or "Here's a program that you can try," or "We've got this other device that can really help." And while these solutions might be clinically appropriate, they might not match what the client came in hoping for. If we don't ask what kind of support our client is hoping for, we risk offering solutions that they aren't ready for or never wanted. Let me share a story from early in my career, one that really stayed with me. About 20 years ago, I was working with a woman with mild to moderate hearing loss. After her assessment, I started talking through options with her, how hearing aids could help, what kind of benefits she might expect. But she stopped me and said, "No, I'm not interested in hearing aids. What else have you got?" And I said, "Okay, well, we've got assistive listening devices like TV headsets." "No, not interested. What else?" "All right, there's a group communication program we offer." "No, not for me. What else?" she said. "Well, your hearing loss isn't severe enough to warrant a cochlear implant," I started to explain. "No," she said, "no implants, no devices." And so I said, "Okay, how about a referral to auditory training?" "No," she said. So finally I asked, "Is there something specific you were hoping for today?" And she said, "Yes, I want the pill, the one that fixes my hearing." You see, she had misunderstood something her ENT had said, and she believed that there was medication that could restore her hearing and that I was the one that could give that to her. And that was the real reason she came in, to get this magical pill from us. Now, imagine how different that appointment might have gone if I'd started by asking what kind of support she was hoping for today. It would have saved us both a lot of time, confusion, and a little bit of embarrassment on my end. So that's what this step is all about, understanding what the client is looking for before we start problem solving. This is especially important when the client has just opened up emotionally. Rather than rushing to fix or solve, let's try pausing and asking, what kind of support might be helpful right now? Is there something you were hoping I could help with today? Or how can I best support you in this? You might be surprised by the answer. And it helps us to match the right intervention at the right time to the right need. So before we jump straight into problem-solving mode and fixing all the things that they're sharing with us, let's first take a moment, check in, ask, listen. Doing so will truly be delivering person and family-centered care at its best. Now, I want to introduce you to one of the most popular tools in our AIMER program. These are the Practice to Progress flashcards. We develop these specifically to help clinicians practice their response skills and to build confidence in having emotionally supportive conversations with clients. Each card features a realistic client statement, often something that sounds simple on the surface, but is actually emotionally loaded when you listen closely. And then just below, we offer a few example responses. These show the ways you might reflect back, validate, explore the emotion, or gently guide the client into a richer conversation. Let's take a look closer. One card might say, "I guess I am quite lonely." And while there are lots of different ways you could respond to this, one option might be to say something like, "Thank you for sharing that with me. Loneliness is a hard place to be. Can you tell me more about who you're seeing at the moment or who in your life you feel most connected to?" These flashcards are great for practicing on your own or with a colleague, and you can even bring them to your team meetings and use them part of reflective practice or role play. Because the more we practice hearing the emotion behind the content, and the more we practice responding with empathy, curiosity, and validation, the easier it becomes in real life appointments. None of us are born knowing how to do this perfectly. These are learnable skills, and tools like this are here to help you build confidence, one conversation at a time. Okay, so we've covered a lot in the last two videos, from active listening and empathy to validation and understanding what clients truly need. These 4 steps form the heart of supportive response when someone's opening up about their well-being. And while they may sound simple, they can have a profound impact on how safe, heard, and supported our clients feel. So let's take a moment to revisit them. Listen actively, not just for content, but for meaning, emotion, and intent. Use your body language, your silence, and your curiosity. Step 2, respond with empathy. Reflect what they're feeling. Show them you get it. Even small empathetic responses build trust. Step 3, validate their experience. Let them know that their emotions make sense, that you're not afraid of them, and that they matter. Step 4, understand what they need. Don't assume. Ask. Be curious. Find out what kind of support they're hoping for and whether it's something you can offer. You don't need advanced counselling skills, just human ones. We're not trying to turn hearing care professionals into psychologists. We're simply recognising that showing up with presence, warmth, and curiosity can transform a clinical transaction into a human connection. And for many clients, that's the part they'll remember most. So as you head back into clinic, take a breath. You already have what it takes. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. And that's more than enough. Before we finish, let's take a moment to reflect on everything you've taken in, not just today, but across videos 5 and 6, together learning how we hold that space for our clients. So, what stood out to you most across these 2 videos? What did these videos help you to notice about your current response style? And what might you try differently next time a client opens up? Write down 1 small shift you felt ready to make and 3 actions you could take to move towards that change. Remember, progress, not perfection. Even 1 intentional shift can strengthen your therapeutic relationships and support your clients in ways that deeply matter. You've already started your journey to deeper connections just by being here. Now, what's your next step? Thank you for joining me in this 2-part session, video 5 and 6, Holding the Space. In our next video, video 7, we're going to look at setting client-centered wellbeing goals. We'll move from supportive conversations to collaborative action. We're going to explore why goal setting is a powerful and respectful next step after a wellbeing conversation. We're also going to introduce a few more tools that you can use straight away in the clinic and share practical phrases to help you bring wellbeing goals into the conversation, confidently and clearly. Remember, you're not alone on this journey because connection starts with understanding. And understanding is exactly what we're building here, one conversation at a time. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.